Good afternoon, everyone. Can I ask everybody to take a seat so we can get started? We're going to start this afternoon with MSDE funding for educational organizations. And we have Laura Hyde as our budget analyst. And Dr. Chowdhury is back here again today. So happy. And after Laura finishes, we'll have you come to the table with your team. Okay?
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ben. All right, we're going to start on page 1 with the operating budget summary. If you look at this graph, the fiscal 2023 budget for funding for educational organizations increases by $5.8 million, or 12.5%, to $52.3 million. This budget has general fund increases of $2.5 million for the non-public school nursing program, $2.1 million for state-aided institutions, $1.7 million in formula funding for Maryland School for the Blind, and $69,000 for Blind Industries and Services of Maryland. If you please turn to page 7. This is Exhibit 3, Maryland School for the Blind, Federal Stimulus Fund Distributions. Funding for educational organizations, federal fund stimulus distributions are administered by MSDE. These fall into 2 categories: funds allocated directly to Maryland School for the Blind and funds available as reimbursable grants to non-public schools. MSB received a total of $912,000 in 4 federal stimulus fund distributions, which you can see at the top chart in Exhibit 3. To date, MSB has spent $219,000 of these dollars, or 24%, you can see in the bottom chart there, of their federal stimulus funds. Non-public schools received 2 opportunities to apply for federal stimulus funds. In calendar 2020, these schools could apply for a $10 million grant for competitive innovation, and these grants were awarded in early 2021 to 10 K-12 public schools that received a total of $2.7 million. In calendar 2021, $35.9 million was made for the safe reopening of non-public schools through the Emergency Assistance to Non-Public Schools, or EANS program. As of December 2021, MSDE has issued 2 rounds of awards for this grant, with a total of 213 non-public schools receiving $17.2 million. MSD will have a 3rd and final round of awards in calendar 2022, and there's a recommended action for your consideration for committee narrative on this program on page 27. If you please turn to page 8, Exhibit 4, Overview of Agency Spending. Out of the total allowance for funding for educational organizations, the general fund allowance is $36.3 million, or 69% of the budget, and special fund allowance is $16 million, or 31% of this budget. At Exhibit 5 on page 9, you can see the general fund allowance. Of $36.3 million in the general fund allowance, MSB receives $26.5 million, or 73%. State-aided institutions receive $6.6 million, or 18%. The non-public schools nursing program receives $2.5 million, or 7%. And Blind Services and Industries of Maryland receives $600,000, or 2%. On page 10, this is Exhibit 6, the special fund allowance. Of the $16 million in special funds appropriated from the Cigarette Restitution Fund in this proposed budget, $10 million, or 62%, is allocated to the Broadening Options and Opportunities for Students Today, or BOOST program, and $6 million, or 38%, is allocated to the Aid to Non-Public Schools program. If you please turn to page 12, this is Exhibit 8, State-Aided Institutions. To determine the budget for SAIs, MSDE and the Maryland State Board of Education select applicants from nonprofit organizations that offer educational programming to Maryland students. This list is then forwarded to the governor for consideration, who determines the SAIs that will receive grants in any given fiscal year. Chapters 399 and 400 of 2021 require the governor to include a fiscal 2023 allowance for each SAI that is equal to or greater than the highest allocation that a recipient received in fiscal 20, 21, or 22. In addition, the governor must also provide an overall increase of $150,000 in funding for this program. To meet this mandate, the fiscal 2023 budget has a total increase of $241,000, which you can see on the second page, and all 56 institutions that received an allocation in fiscal 22 receive higher than the Chapter 399-400 mandated amount in fiscal 23. If you please turn to page 14, this is Exhibit 9, Maryland School for the Blind Enrollment. An enrollment formula in section 8313 of the education article determines MSB's annual enrollment count, which includes a 4-year average to soften increases and decreases. Early intervention and outreach students are counted at 50%, and school-age students are counted at 100%. For fiscal 2023, MSB's projected enrollment count is 392, which includes 217 school-age students, 36 early intervention students, and 139 outreach students. And for the purposes of formula funding, the fiscal 2023 enrollment totals 305. Will you please turn to page 16? This is Exhibit 10, Maryland School for the Blind Revenues and Expenditures. In the past 5 years, funding from state and local revenue has accounted for approximately 93% of MSB revenue. Fiscal 2022 revenues total $36.8 million, with state and local revenue sources accounting for $34 million, or 92% of this amount. Expenses total $42.4 million, which is $5.6 million more than MSB's anticipated revenues for fiscal 2022. If you please turn to page 19. This is Boost Current Appropriation and Fund Balance. The fiscal 2022 Boost appropriation for the 2021-2022 school year was $10 million. The total amount available for awards included in the $10 million appropriation, plus an additional $700,000 in funds retained from fiscal 21, for a total of $10.7 million available for awards. The Boost Advisory Board offered approximately $12.2 million in awards, of which $1.9 million, or 17%, were declined. With these declines, MSDE retains a balance of $458,000 for fiscal 2023 awards. If you please turn to page 20. This is Boost total student awards offered. Of the $12.2 million in total Boost awards, $3.7 million was awarded to 772 students who qualified for free meals and attended public school. $1.5 million was awarded to 404 students who qualified for reduced price meals and attended public school. $2.4 million was awarded to 1,531 students who qualified for free meals and attended private school. And $1 million was awarded to 849 students who qualified for reduced price meals attending private school. A total of 870 high school students were awarded $2.6 million in additional awards, and 246 special education students were awarded $901,000, which meets the legislative intent of this program to fund at least $700,000 in additional awards for special education students. Recommended actions start on page 22.
Can I ask you a question first?
Sure.
Going back to the qualified for reduced price meals but attended public schools, what does that mean?
Qualified for reduced price. So these are students who applied for the program, attended public school, and qualified for reduced price meals. And they wanted to get a Boost scholarship to attend a private school, and so they qualified for this scholarship.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
No problem. The recommended actions start on page 22 and include restoring annual language for aid to non-public schools and Boost programs. The recommended action on page 27 for your consideration includes deleting general fund appropriation for the non-public school nursing program due to the availability of federal funds to assist non-public schools. This ends my presentation, and I stand for questions.
Any questions? Senator Alford?
Thank you so much. You mentioned Boost families who applied but were not accepted. Do we have any data on the rationale or reasons behind that?
In terms of awards that they didn't give out, they don't submit that as part of the Boost report, but I can certainly get that for you if you want.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Quarterman.
Yes, I apologize, I walked in a few minutes late. I just picked up the last part where you said about with the nurse funding. So that's going to be supplemented, though, you said, with federal funds. Did I hear that correctly? So the nursing program, nurses would still stay in effect, is that correct?
The recommendation was to use federal funds.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Dr. Chowdhury, come on up. Thank you for that presentation.
Thank you.
I hear you're multitasking this afternoon.
Yes, I will see Chair Elfred for the other Senate leader. Thank you for having me. With me is Justin Dayhoff, Assistant Soup of Financial Planning, Operations and Strategy. Good afternoon, Chair King and members of the subcommittee. I am grateful to you for your commitment to education. Thank you, Ms. Hyde, for your thoughtful analysis. As we begin today, I would like to take this time to thank all Maryland's education partners operating in a worldwide pandemic over the last 2 years. Has been challenging. At best, all the school communities, public, private, all teachers, parents, guardians, students, caregivers, families, have done their best to overcome obstacles and persevere in spite of unprecedented circumstances. The funding for educational organizations budget includes the Maryland School for the Blind Industries and Services of Maryland, state-aided institutions, and several non-public school programs. Representatives from the Maryland School for the Blind and the Blind Industries and Services of Maryland are available to address their programs. I will respond to the remainder of the analysis. Given the analysis explorations of non-public school aid, I will focus my response today on the BOOST program, proposed budget bill language related to non-public school handbooks, and the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund. Since 2016, the BOOST program has provided scholarship awards to low-income students to attend eligible non-public schools. To be eligible, non-public schools must participate in the non-public school textbook and technology program. The textbook program is also the gateway program for the Aging Schools program and participating in the textbook program for the 21-22 school year. There are 266 non-public schools that are participating in the textbook program as of the current fiscal year. For the BOOST program, the number of scholarship awards has grown to 2,416 in fiscal year 2017 to 3,109 in fiscal year 2022. Funding for the program has grown from $4.8 million in fiscal year 2017 to $10.7 million in fiscal year 2022. The analysis recommends the amendment budget bill language for the non-public school textbook program and for the BOOST program. MSDE concurs with the recommendation number 1, which adjusts the per school allocations based on the school's percent of students eligible for free and reduced price meals. For the recommendation number 2, MSDE respectfully disagrees. MSDE is concerned that the requirement for MSDE to receive and review handbooks will conflict with the recent federal district court ruling in a case filed by a participating school against the state and the BOOST program. The court held that the state violated Bethel's First Amendment speech rights by excluding Bethel from the BOOST program based only on the content of its admissions policy. Specifically, the court stated, and I quote, "The court appreciates the legislator's interest in ensuring that the BOOST funding does not subsidize discrimination by participating schools." And the court goes on to also say, "But the state acts in its own peril when it attempts to draw lines between acceptable speech and unacceptable speech on specific topics." I point to you to our written response for that full quote and an additional explanatory language on why we are respectfully disagreeing with this recommendation. Otherwise, MSD requests for the handbook requirement to be deleted. Otherwise, as to the recommendation 3, 4, and 5 regarding non-public school eligibility and BOOST program reporting, the department concurs. Regarding recommendation 6, deleting the general fund appropriation for a non-public school nursing program, the department respectfully disagrees with the recommendation and concurs with the governor's allowance. The MSD also concurs with the legislator's request for a report related to the governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, or GEAR. gears. The Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, otherwise known as CRSA, provided for $35.8 million in emergency assistance to non-public schools that had to be distributed via MSDE procured services and assistance within 6 months of receipt of the funding. MSD received the funds in January of 2021 and issued 2 rounds of funding in March and June of 2021, distributing $14.2 million to reimburse eligible non-public schools expenses. The EANS program is a particularly difficult grant program to administer because the MSD is not, under the federal provision of the program, allowed to pass funding to non-public schools. MSD must instead provide allowable services and assistance to non-public schools that meet the federal program's allowable use criteria. The state then retains full title and ownership of any non-consumables administered to participating non-public schools. Unfortunately, if MSD were to provide, say, a new HVAC system, MSD would be unable to take that back at the end of the grant period. So while MSD can deny requests for HVAC under the federal program, the MSD nonetheless still has to allow non-public schools to request the service in this example of the HVAC replacement. For this reason, in December of 2021, the United States Department of Education found that the state's plan to administer the program non-compliant because MSD did not allow non-public schools to request funding for the allowable services and assistance that MSD knew it could not procure or administer. MSD was not the only state to have the issue, but the U.S. Department of Education allowed states who were in the process of administering the program at the 6-month mark to continue their implementation, thereby negating the 6-month time frame. As a result, MSD issued a 3rd round of funding in January of 2022. Of the 264 schools that applied, 182 were eligible for funding. The eligible schools submitted requests totaling $31.6 million, $6 million in unreimbursed expenses, and $25.4 million in requests for services. MSD staff are finalizing the review of the requests. The next step is to categorize and procure the services requested, which MSD expects to complete by late spring. The American Rescue Plan included an additional $39.2 million in emergency assistance to non-public schools. MSD plans to administer the American Rescue Plan EANS dollars program in the same manner and expects to release applications to non-public schools by late spring. I want to end our response to the budget analysis by again thanking this committee for its commitment to the broad range of educational services and organizations represented here today. With that, I'm happy to answer any and all questions.
Thank you. I did want to mention that it was a little short notice for some of the agencies that really wanted to come and testify today, but we had some discussions with the House, and they had only written testimony, and we figured out having 57 people come today or more to come and testify for their budget that was probably going to be okay, that it was probably the most beneficial to all of us for everybody to send written testimony. So that was the logic behind that for Friday afternoon. Senator Zucker, you have a question?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. Mr. Superintendent, good to see you. Hope you look like you're rested, even though I know that you're faking it well.
Well, I got 45 minutes instead of 15 last night, so I'm good.
I'm glad to hear that. I thought you were going to say 30 minutes. So I'm glad. But in terms of the, I guess in terms of item 2, the handbook, this is I guess in keeping, this is just sort of standard budget language that we've put in year after year. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I guess your concern is, because we need obviously transparency, but I haven't read the case that you're citing here. So
Yeah.
tell me why. So if you moved, so is it just the case that's prohibiting you from doing it?
As a result of this case and the manner in which we have been doing it and the challenge that was done, council strongly recommends, and this is, sometimes I don't agree with council. And so on this one, I do. And they believe that it will weaken and ultimately cause other issues that would compromise the program because it would be an overreach. Based on council's recommendation. But I would ask you to look at the full case and everything. And this is one of those that it was fine up to that moment until the challenge happened and the court ruled in their favor.
Any other questions? Senator Alfred?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a follow-up, Superintendent, I appreciate the pickle that we're kind of in, but because of the Supreme Court. At the same time, I think we can all share in the value of public education or public dollars not being used to discriminate against students or their families or the educators in their schools. So if we do not include this handbook language, how can we be assured as appropriators that that standard will still be met?
Yes, so, the program is monitored. I have a team dedicated to it. One of your questions earlier was, how do we know who are the people who are not accepted? So I'm happy to get you that report. Normally, it's because they're not eligible. It's found after they apply through the process, but I'll get that to you. We do monitor regularly. Families obviously can file complaints. We have a board that is very passionate on it. There are several people. The board is the one who ultimately pushed us to go ahead and continue on with monitoring their handbook, and ultimately, we didn't win. And so I don't think any of that goes away. Now the challenge is, and this is where you are getting at, is if someone read that handbook while they were applying, it could have is my child going to be discriminated against? That didn't happen, and the court didn't find that, but, this is them. Ultimately, they saw this as a statement of their values, not necessarily something they're going to use to discriminate in the application process. But if a family felt they were doing things indirectly, they can always file that complaint, and we will act accordingly, and we could revoke that funding or their standing to do this program. And I can assure you, this will be a more hands-on Msde, like I told you yesterday, and someone coming from Texas, I understand these issues and challenges as well around not having public dollars go to institutions that discriminate kids on outdated beliefs, frankly. I'll just say it like that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. You've got a few minutes to catch your breath before the next meeting.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, next we're going to go to Bowie State University. Ian Klein is our budget analyst. Dr. Carl Goodman, provost, is here with us, and Mr. Anthony Savia, vice president for administration and finance.
Good afternoon, Chair King and members of the subcommittee. I am Anthony Savia, Vice President for Administration and Finance.
Can I stop you a second? We have to have the analyst do his presentation
I'm sorry,
first.
I apologize.
Okay, thank you. I didn't point that out first. That was my fault.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to start on page 4, Exhibit 1, which shows total undergraduate enrollment by category and changes from fall 2016 to 2021. Total undergraduate enrollment increased by 76 students, or 1.4%, from fall 2020 to 2021. As illustrated in the exhibit, first-time full-time students experience, I've got the wrong presentation up. Apologies about that. There we go. As illustrated in the exhibit, first-time full-time students experienced the largest decline, falling by 44 students, which was offset by an increase in the continuing student population, which grew by 52. Total undergraduate enrollment in fall 2021 reached 5,381 students. Exhibit 2 on page 5 documents the changes in undergraduate applications. As illustrated in the exhibit, the number of applications grew tremendously from 2015 through 2018 as the result of Bowie partnering with an enrollment firm that specializes in identifying students who will apply to universities. The drop in 2019 was the result of a change in methodology that counted only completed applications. Of note, beginning in 2019, the acceptance rate of applications increased substantially, totaling 87% in 2021. Despite this increase, the yield rate has fallen to 21% in 2021. Moving to student performance, Exhibit 3 on page 6 provides the second and third year retention rates for first-time full-time students. The second-year retention rate has increased in both 2018 and 2019, reaching 75.3% for the 2019 cohort. The third-year retention rate rebounded for the 2017 cohort low mark of 53.9% to 58.7% for the 2018 cohort. Bowie has attributed these increases to the usage of analytics designed to identify at-risk students and increased financial aid. Exhibit 4 on page 7 provides the 4- and 6-year graduation rates for first-time full-time students. As shown in the exhibit, the 6-year graduation rate peaked with the 2012 cohort, reaching 47.6%, which has modestly dropped with the following 2 cohorts. The 4-year graduation rate has steadily improved since 2008, reaching a rate of 17.8% for the 2016 cohort. Exhibit 5 on page 8 provides the 8-year graduation rate by Pell and non-Pell recipient status. Non-Pell eligible students graduate at higher rates than Pell eligible students in all of the identified categories, while Pell eligible first-time transfer students graduate at higher rates than both first-time full-time and part-time transfer Pell eligible students. Exhibit 6 on page 9 shows the estimated cost of attendance versus the average net price for full-time in-state students by income level between fiscal 2018 and 2020. This exhibit shows that the average cost of attendance over these years was $23,323. However, the actual net price for students when aid was awarded averaged to be $14,033. What this exhibit also shows is that the cost of attendance will vary depending on income level. For example, in fiscal 2020, it cost a student $11,099 with a family income of under $30,000, but $21,633 for a student with a family income of over $110,000. Exhibit 7 on page 10 shows the amount of institutional aid awarded and total dollar amount of awards provided by category. The amount of institutional aid awarded has increased from $6.4 million in fiscal 2016 to $7.6 million in fiscal 2021. Merit scholarships totaled $3.3 million in fiscal 2021 and represented the aid category with the greatest award distributed for that year, which was the result of the institution attempting to attract students with higher grade point averages. Exhibit 8 on page 11 documents the U.S. Department of Education's, which recently began reporting the median debt and earnings for graduates by field of study in an effort to give students a better picture of outcomes at the program level. What this exhibit illustrates is that the median debt of students ranged from $18,750 for nursing majors to over $29,000 for history majors. As is also shown in the exhibit, nursing majors attain the highest median earnings, totaling over $62,000. Moving to the budget, Exhibit 9 on page 12 provides an overall summary of the Federal Higher Education Emergency Relief Funds, or HERF, spending by category, of which Bowie received $90.1 million. Of this funding, a minimum of $16.1 million was required to be spent on financial aid. As shown in the exhibit, Bowie plans to expend the remaining HERF by the conclusion of fiscal 2022. Exhibit 10 on page 13 provides a breakdown of spending by HERF category. In total, Bowie plans to spend $35 million on academic and technological expenses, $34.1 million on student aid, $19.9 million on testing, PPE, and other COVID-related expenditures, with $1.2 million to be spent on addressing lost revenues. Exhibit 11 on page 14 provides the budget changes for unrestricted funds by program from fiscal 21 to 2022. The largest dollar change was in academic support, which increased by $2.2 million. This increase reflects supplemental funds received in fiscal 2022 for programming support related to nursing and bioinformatics. Student services increases by $1.1 million due to PIN conversions, additional contractual support for counseling, and other student support-related activities. Operation and maintenance of plant decreases by $1.6 million as a result of campus-wide renewal projects and plant fund expenses posting in fiscal 2021. The proposed fiscal 2023 budget is found in Exhibit 12 and is shown on pages 15 and 16. This identifies general funds increasing by $8.2 million and special funds increasing by $10 million for a total state fund increase of $8.2 million. As is shown on page 16, the additional state support provides $10.6 million in Chapter 41 of 2021 funds, $3.6 million for personnel adjustments, $2.2 million to restore the fiscal 2021 BPW cut, $1.5 million mandated by Chapter 356 for the Center for Data Analytics and Sports Gaming, and $800,000 for various operating expenses. The President should comment on how the institution plans to return to an operational structure in fiscal 2023 without the assistance of HERF funding, should pandemic-related expenditures or impacts continue into the 22-23 academic year. Exhibit 13 on page 17 provides a breakdown of unrestricted revenues by source and total unrestricted funds. The ratios for these levels remained roughly stable from fiscal 2018 through 2020. The impact of the pandemic, however, can be seen in fiscal 2021, with auxiliary revenue representing only 14% of unrestricted revenues. In the 2022 working budget and the 2023 allowance, Bowie anticipates total unrestricted funds to grow substantially, increasing to $147 million in the 2023 allowance. The President should comment on the university's anticipated auxiliary revenue projections, identifying if those projections are realistic, given the continued impact the COVID-19 pandemic has had on auxiliary services. The one issue discussed starts on page 19 and concerns the nursing program. As shown in Exhibit 14, the Bowie nursing program has failed to meet the Maryland Board of Nursing required pass rate since 2010. Despite this failure, the program is still accredited by the Accreditation Commission for Education in Nursing, ACEN, on a continuing accreditation with condition status. Bowie has developed an action plan to address the poor pass rates. DLS recommends adopting committee narrative to report on the progress that the nursing program has made toward meeting the Maryland Board of Nursing required pass rate. The DLS recommended action is as I just mentioned, and with that, I conclude my presentation and would be happy to answer questions.
Any questions? I don't see any. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much. So good afternoon, Chair King and members of the subcommittee. I'm Anthony Savia, Vice President for Administration and Finance. On behalf of President Amita Bro, I am happy to appear before you today in support of the Governor's FY23 allowance for the University System of Maryland and Bowie State University. Today, I am joined by my colleague, Dr. Carl Goodman, Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs, and we both say thank you. Thanks to the Governor for the generous increase in state funding to include cost of living salary increases and one-time bonuses for our very hardworking faculty and staff, restoration of the cuts to our FY21 budget, $500,000 to backfill funding inadvertently restricted in our current budget, and for the first installment of funds under SB1 and HB1 in support of new academic programs and initiatives. We also very much appreciate Mr. Ian Klein's thorough analysis and recommendation to support the Governor's budget. You have the President's full testimony, wherein she highlights several accomplishments in 3 priorities: academic excellence, student success, and the long-term viability of the institution. These are the priorities of our Racing to Excellence strategic plan. We are racing. We pivoted during the pandemic and even picked up pace. We returned in full force to the campus last July with in-person classes starting this last fall. We opened our new P3 Entrepreneurship Living Learning Community with 557 new beds fully occupied to support our entrepreneurship initiatives, growing enrollment, and the increased demand for student housing. Our faculty are racing. They garnered 38% more federal grants during the pandemic and are doing amazing research in STEM and education. Our enrollment grew during the pandemic. Enrollment is up, applications are up. Even during the pandemic, we graduated a record 882 bachelor degrees and 16 doctorates and commissioned a record 23 officers in our award-winning ROTC program. Our amazing students are racing. We're very, very proud of them. If you visited Target recently, you might have seen Sharon Townsend's award-winning design on T-shirts as part of Target's Black Beyond Measure HBCU Challenge. Our Bulldogs won their 3rd straight CIAA title in football. In December, we launched the BSU Bold, our $50 million campaign for excellence, the largest fundraising effort in BSU's history. We are already $40 million at our goal. This has been made possible with the $25 million transformational gift from philanthropist Mackenzie Scott. Additionally, we completed a new master plan, our first economic development plan, and we are working closely with Prince George's County to develop county-owned land adjacent to our campus. No question the past 2 years has been challenging, but we have been able to remain focused on our priorities while keeping our community safe. Again, we appreciate your support. I will now address the questions that have been asked. First, the President should comment on how institution plans to return to the operational structure without the assistance of the federal emergency relief funding. The university has recently been notified that the deadline to spend federal emergency dollars has been extended through fiscal year 2023. We have been very aware that these are one-time funds and have made sure that these dollars are spent strictly related to COVID expenses. And moving forward, barring a repeat of the pandemic conditions, we anticipate minimum COVID-related ongoing costs to maintain our operation. The second question has to do with our auxiliary revenue and whether our projections are realistic or not. Thanks to our enrollment growth and the opening of the new Entrepreneurship Living Learning Community, we're at full occupancy in that building. The university has already begun to see a rebound in auxiliary revenue associated with residential services such as room and board. We believe our revenue projections are realistic given our enrollment growth and the return to full occupancy. Again, thank you for your continued support. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Senator Alford, I don't see you blinking, but I know you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. And certainly we commend your efforts over the pandemic. It's not been easy for anybody, but particularly educators in higher ed. I do want to just touch on Exhibit 14 and the issue of the Maryland Board of Nursing required pass rate. What can you do differently, or what more do you need from us to help increase those pass rates?
Dr. Goodman?
Sure. First and foremost, for our nursing program, we've done a tremendous job really over this last year and a half. We brought in a new chairperson to direct our nursing program. We brought in some new faculty members in terms of as well. Currently, right now, our scores, we're about at 85% pass rate, so we've made a tremendous change as far as where we were. We really reinvigorated our students in terms of providing a STEM lab for our students, more clinical site, more clinical training. We've used a lot of the tools that are involved in nursing, from ATI, which is an assessment tool that normally is placed into the classrooms, but also gives the students an opportunity really to be more prepared in terms of taking their certification as well. So there are things that we are doing in terms of things that we could do more of. Again, we definitely are looking at more resources for our programs. Right now, we have at least 50 students who are graduating from our program. We would like to expand upon those numbers by expanding upon those numbers in terms of bringing more students into the programs. We definitely need more faculty members and additional scholarships for our students as well.
I don't know if there's anything more important we can do in higher ed right now than educate nurses and health professionals at this moment. So thank you for those efforts. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, you're getting off easy this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice weekend. Okay, we'll move on to Coppin. Ian Klein is our budget analyst, and we have Dr. Anthony Jenkins, the president of Coppin, is here, Mr. Stephen Danick, Mr. Marcus Bird, and Mr. Matthew Frayling III. We'll start with the budget analyst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've got the right presentation this time, so we're going to start with page 4.
Okay.
Exhibit 1 shows total undergraduate enrollment and category changes from fall 2016 to 2021. Total undergraduate enrollment continued its steady overall decline in 2021, decreasing by 275 students, or 13% when compared to 2020. As is illustrated in the exhibit, both the first-time, full-time, and continuing student populations experienced decreases in 2020 and 2021. Coppin attributes these declines to the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic has had on the type of student that Coppin services, who were hit particularly hard over these years. Undergraduate enrollment totaled 1,833 students in fall 2021. Exhibit 2 on page 5 documents the changes in undergraduate applications. As illustrated in the exhibit, the number of applications had been improving from 2016 through 2019, but have cratered since the onset of the pandemic. The acceptance rate in 2021 increased to 48%, which is the highest total since 2010. However, the yield rate was only 18%, which is roughly in line with what the institution has achieved since 2013. Moving to student performance, Exhibit 3 on page 6 provides the second and third year retention rates for first-time, full-time students. From the 2010 through 2019 cohorts, the second-year retention rate has stayed within the 60% range. The third-year retention rate has been steadily increasing since the 2015 cohort, with the 2018 cohort's 50.1% retention rate being the highest rate attained at the university in over a decade. Exhibit 4 on page 7 provides the 4- and 6-year graduation rates for first-time full-time students. As shown in the exhibit, the 6-year graduation rate reached 31.5% with the 2014 cohort, or nearly double the rate achieved by the 2007 cohort. Coppin attributes the growth to the development of the academic success centers, which are charged to conduct individualized advising sessions. The 4-year graduation rate dipped to 9.7% for the 2016 cohort, which was attributed to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Exhibit 5 on page 8 provides the 8-year graduation rate by Pell and non-Pell recipient status. Full-time transfer students, both Pell and non-Pell eligible, graduate at higher rates than first-time full-time and part-time transfer students. Pell-eligible students graduate at lower rates than non-Pell eligible students in all categories with the exception of full-time transfer students. Exhibit 6 on page 9 shows the estimated cost of attendance versus the average net price for full-time in-state students by income level between fiscal 2018 and 2020. This exhibit shows that the average cost of attendance over these years was $21,038. However, the actual net price for students when aid was awarded varied depending on income level. For example, in fiscal 2020, it cost a student $10,010 with a family income of under $30,000, but $16,070 for a student with a family income of over $48,000 but less than $75,000. Exhibit 7 on page 10 shows the amount of institutional aid awarded and total dollar amount awards provided by category. The amount of institutional aid awarded has decreased from $3.6 million in fiscal 2016 to $3.5 million in fiscal 2021. Athletic scholarships totaled $1.3 million in fiscal 2021 and represented the aid category with the greatest award distributed for that year. The President should comment on why a shift was made towards spending more on athletic scholarships and less on need-based aid and the impact that this has had on low-income students. The U.S. Department of Education recently began reporting the median debt and earnings for graduates by field of study in an effort to give students a better picture of outcomes at the program level. Exhibit 8 on page 11 illustrates that the median debt of students ranged from just under $22,000 for nursing majors to over $35,000 for management science majors. As is also shown in the exhibit, nursing majors attain the highest median earnings, totaling over $73,000. Moving to the budget, Exhibit 9 on page 12 provides an overall summary of the Federal Higher Education Emergency Relief Funds, or HERF, spending by category, of which Coppin received $39.1 million. Of this funding, a minimum of $7 million was required to be spent on financial aid. As is shown in the exhibit, Coppin does not plan to expend the entirety of their HERF allocation by the conclusion of fiscal 2022, and as a result will request a no-cost extension to expend the remaining $10.7 million by the conclusion of fiscal 2023. Exhibit 10 on page 13 provides a breakdown of the spending by HERF category that was not mandated for student financial assistance. In total, Coppin plans to spend $13.9 million on covering lost revenue, $8.8 million on testing, PPE, and other COVID-related expenditures, $7.9 million on additional student financial assistance, and $1.5 million on academic and technological expenses. Exhibit 11 on page 14 provides the budget changes by unrestricted funds by program from fiscal 2021 to 2022. The largest dollar change was in institutional support, which decreases by $2.5 million as a result of a reduction in contractual services and information technology expenses. Operation and maintenance of plant also decreases, falling by $1.8 million as a reduction of contractual services as well as lower debt service costs. Instruction costs are expected to increase by $1.6 million due to the filling of numerous vacant faculty positions. Through the first half of the fiscal year, anticipated tuition and revenue fees and auxiliary revenue have been lower than anticipated. The President should comment on actions that the university will take should revenue not meet budgeted levels. The proposed fiscal 2023 budget is found in Exhibit 12 on page 16 and includes state funding increases totaling $12.3 million. As is shown on pages 16 and 17, the additional state support provides $5.7 million in Chapter 41 of 2021 funds, $2.7 million to restore the fiscal 2021 BPW cut, $2.5 million for personnel adjustments, and $1.4 million for various operating expenses. Exhibit 13 on page 18 provides a breakdown of unrestricted revenues by source and total unrestricted funds. As is shown in the exhibit, state support generally represents roughly 2/3 of unrestricted revenue for Coppin. The fiscal 2023 allowance anticipates tuition and fee and auxiliary revenue to rebound to pre-pandemic levels. Given that those totals appear unlikely to be met for fiscal 2022, the President should comment on these projections, identifying if they are realistic given the continued impact the pandemic has had on enrollment and auxiliary service revenues. The one issue discussed starts on page 20 and concerns enrollment and state funds per full-time equivalent student. As is shown in Exhibit 14 on page 20, total enrollment at Coppin has continuously declined from 2011 through 2021. Coppin's total enrollment has fallen by 51.2% from the 2005 record high of 4,306 students to 2,100 students in 2021. The President should comment on if there is a break-even point for enrollment and revenues, and if so, what will happen if enrollment drops below this break-even point. Despite the decline in enrollment, and as is shown in Exhibit 15 on page 21, education and general expenditures have, with the exception of 2022, steadily increased. While generally not expending greater than the revenue brought in, Coppin's overall E&G expenditure amount is budgeted to increase by 21.5% from fiscal 2015 through 2023, growing by $12.5 million. As a result of the increased expenditures and decreasing enrollment, state funds spent per FTE have increased. Exhibit 16 on page 22 shows state funds spent per FTE at Coppin. From 2015 to the 2023 adjusted allowance, state funds spent per FTE have increased by $13,087, or $10,267 when excluding Chapter 41 of 2021 funding. And at $30,090, Coppin is behind only the University of Maryland, Baltimore in costs per FTE. The University System of Maryland office should comment on whether Coppin's state fund appropriation is appropriate when excluding Chapter 41 of 2021 funding, given its size and mission when compared to other USM institutions, and if steps are needed to decrease the ratio of state funds per FTE. The DLS recommended action is found on page 23, and that is to see the University System of Maryland overview for system-wide recommendations. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
Thank you, great job. Questions? Okay, Dr. Jenkins.
Thank you. And let me first start by saying good afternoon, and King Chair and to the members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to testify on the governor's fiscal year budget for 2023 and the budget allocation or allowance for Coppin State University, and to provide you with an update of where we have moved the university since I joined on June 1st of 2020. I also want to thank our analyst, Mr. Ian Klein, for the outstanding job of assessing the budget of the institution. With that, since I arrived at Coppin, we have been talking about how we reimagine Coppin State University and how we develop a pathway forward. And I would like to share over the last year some milestones that we have achieved at the institution. Clearly, the pandemic has had an adverse impact on not only Coppin, but higher education across the board. And I am pleased to say that throughout the pandemic, the university committed to its values of shared governance and taking the necessary steps to keep our campus safe. Our positivity rate at the university throughout this pandemic has never exceeded 1.2%, and today stands at 0. When we talk about Coppin and reimagining our institution, we have also developed an academic strategic plan, and our academic leadership and faculty have launched several new high-demand degree programs and certificates to provide pathways to high-demand careers throughout Maryland and across our region. And these programs, as well as new fully online degree programs that we are rolling out for fall 2022 and fall 2023, are designed to help us recruit, attract, retain students, as well as improve the overall brand of the university. We are also focusing on doing more to enhance the research arm of the institution, as we see this as a significant value proposition. Our quest to elevate the research arm of our university is a top priority, and we have been working diligently towards that over the last year. Across all disciplines, faculty are engaging in more grant writing and research. Last year alone, we secured over $6 million in grant funding. This is the highest in the history of the institution. In understanding the importance of research and its impact on students' development, we are cultivating a more strenuous research environment on campus to enhance the experiential learning of our students, understanding that that connectivity has a positive and profound impact on students' ability to think, enhance their critical thinking skills, and enhance their retention and graduation rates. We are also excited about plans that we are putting forth to grow Coppin State University. It is important that we focus here because there are other aspects of the institution where we have made great strides. This is still one area where we are looking to do better. We will do better and are building inroads to do so. There are two major elements to growing our university population: increase the number of students entering the institution and increase the number of students that we retain. And so we are developing our ever-first comprehensive enrollment management plan to focus on how we are improving our internal processes with the admissions office. We are expanding our recruitment footprint, and we are developing dual enrollment partnerships with community colleges and high schools to include our very own Coppin Academy. We are securing external assistance to help recruit for our online degree programs. And we are increasing the number of competitive merit scholarships that we offer here at the institution. You know, we are also working to focus more on retaining our students. And so we are developing and breaking ground this spring on our new Eagle Achievement Center, which will be a centralized one-stop shop location that focuses on first-year advising, academic coaching. It will house our math, our writing, and career exploration areas, as well as other essential wraparound support services needed for our students and for us to address our retention. We're also focusing on how we can decrease time to degree completion. One of several steps that we are taking is our summer Soar initiative. We are providing students who earn a total of 30 semester credit hours during the academic year beginning this fall the opportunity to take up to 6 credits over the summer for free. We are also focusing on how we create the opportunity to have more prior year learning opportunities for students, and looking at how we develop more accelerated degree completion programs across campus. In an effort to make ourselves also more competitive, in spring 2021, we established our Presidential Scholarship. The Presidential Scholarship is the most prestigious merit scholarship offered by the university, and it covers tuition, fees, room and board, and books. And I'm pleased to say that this past fall, we brought in our inaugural Presidential Scholarship cohort of 7 incredible students. Coppin has also made progress towards our 6-year graduation goal of 38% by 2026. Reaching a 6-year graduation rate of 32% last year, this is the highest in Coppin's history, and up from 24% just 4 years ago. And we are keenly aware that there are many challenges facing our students because we educate such a large population of non-traditional students. While earning their degree, they are working, raising their families, and also face economic hardships. Despite offering the lowest tuition of any 4-year university in the state of Maryland, we early on determined to help our students. For all returning and newly incoming students for fall 2021, we provided them a $1,200 tuition grant to help pay down their tuition. To over 2,000 students, administering over $2.4 million in financial support. To assist students living on campus for the 2021-2022 academic year, we awarded Pell eligible students a $5,000 grant to help cover the cost of living on campus. we helped over 150 students and reduced their total loan debt by over $100,000. And athletics plays an important part on our campus as well, and we are pleased to say that our students are excelling not only on the field of competition, but also in the classroom. Our student athletes earned a mean GPA of 3.2 last fall, one of the highest in the MEAC. 12 of our 14 athletic teams earned a 3.0 or higher, and 19 of our student athletes earned a perfect 4.0. And that puts us on par or exceeds many of our peer sister institutions. Coppin State's women tennis star Christy Turner was one of 45 students across the nation who was selected as a student scholar for the White House Initiatives on Historically Black Colleges and Universities. Coppin State is leading the way in how urban anchor universities engage with their communities. As the only Maryland HBCU with a community health center, we partnered with a host of community organizations to provide health and wellness to their various constituencies. And during the pandemic, we expanded our outreach, utilizing our faculty and students from our nationally ranked nursing program to provide testing and vaccinations to thousands of residents across Baltimore. Coppin is also having a significant economic impact. Our economic impact is over $170 million to the state of Maryland. Over 70% of our graduates remain in Maryland after graduating, and 48% remain in Baltimore City. This is a huge win for our students and our state, and a significant return on investment. When the state invests in Coppin, that return is more than 3 times what Coppin is receiving. As of July 1st, 2021, Coppin secured over $3.8 million in external funding. We have focused on fundraising, and we have raised the most in 1 year in the history of our institution, and the last 3 years combined. And so I am pleased to say that we are making significant strides at Coppin. We have, I think, accomplished some significant milestones, and there's no question that there is more work to be done. I'll answer the questions that were raised for the president, and then, Madam Chair, I will pause and open it up to any questions that you or the committee may have. Thank you. With regards to spending more on athletic scholarships and less on need-based aid, and the impact that that had on low-income students, there was no shift in the awarding philosophy of student athletes. However, an adjustment in the cost of living did produce an increase in the amount of athletic scholarship awards. And this may have seemed inflated because we experienced a higher rate of attrition among non-student athletes as compared to our student athletes. The impact on low-income students, there was no impact on low-income students. And due to the pandemic, the U.S. Department of Education allowed institutions to shift their federal work-study funds to Supplemental Education Opportunity Grants, also known as SGOG. In accordance with this shift, colleges and universities were permitted to award these grant funds to all students regardless of their work-study status. Coppin State chose to award the reallocated work-study funds before distributing any institutional aid to our low-income students, which resulted in an increase in total aid awarded to that population. Further, to support our students, as I noted earlier, we were the first university in the state to use our CARES Act funding to provide additional financial support to our students, where we gave them $2,400 for the 2021-2022 academic year. The president should also comment on actions that the university will take should revenue not meet budgeted levels. Coppin State University projects revenue will not meet budgeted levels. Considering this, Coppin State University has developed and implemented proactive processes that allow for more agility and places the university in a stronger position to forecast variances in real time. Moreover, we have created a contingency plan that includes us taking actions such as implementing hiring freezes and reducing discretionary spending. Understanding our current position, our budget office will continue to actively monitor actual to budget revenue and expenditures on a weekly basis. Now, we have successfully used this process, and it has helped improve the fiscal health of our institution. So that Coppin State University this last year, according to USM financial dashboard indicators, all 8 of our financial indicators improved. We were the only university in the USM system where all 8 of its indicators improved. And so we are very committed to making sure that we've strengthened the fiscal health of our university. And the president should also comment on anticipated auxiliary revenue projections, identifying if those projections are realistic given the continued impact of COVID-19 pandemic has had on enrollment and auxiliary service revenues. Auxiliary revenue projection is driven primarily by room and board at the institution. And at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, we took actions that consequently adversely impacted our auxiliary revenue. The decision to reduce the density of our campus during the pandemic created a decline in auxiliary revenue typically generated by housing, food services, and other campus-wide activities. Prior to COVID-19, Coppin State consistently experienced 100% occupancy in our residential facilities. Based on this trend, we believe that our projection is realistic. And the expectation is that upon full return to campus, we will generate levels of auxiliary revenue witnessed prior to COVID-19. And not to leave anything to chance, and to meet our projections, we are deploying new recruitment tactics to attract more residential students. And we are continuing to attract and recruit more Baltimore City students who find living on campus is a better opportunity and alternative to where they are currently living. And despite their proximity to campus, we have seen this number increase. We are also going to use our academic programs that are attached to living learning communities to recruit, retain, and also move more students to on-campus housing. And finally, the final question that the president should comment on if there is a break point for the enrollment and revenues. If so, what would happen when enrollment dropped below that break point? You know, this is a very interesting question, and one that my team and I gave great consideration to. The identification of a breaking point for enrollment and revenue is a difficult one, and it's difficult to give a number because there are so many uncontrollable variables that are involved in making or taking such a position. For example, tuition revenues are driven by the enrollment mix of full-time, part-time, in-state, out-of-state, undergrad, graduate students living on campus, living off campus. And while our enrollment strategies can target specific students, it's difficult to predict with any great certainty what that mix will be on any given fiscal year. In addition, Coppin State understands that having the lowest tuition and fees of any USM school, including Morgan, this also could have a impact on this decision. And as a result, our state appropriations, they comprise of 65% of our overall budget. So when giving that fact, reductions in our state appropriation, such as the reduction that occurred at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, has a greater fiscal impact for Coppin than it does other USM institutions. Coppin State University will continue its internal processes of closely monitoring our budgeted spending to actual revenues to ensure expenditures do not exceed revenues. This process will be strictly monitored over time to ensure that there are no long-term impacts to students and the delivery of academic instruction. The university's proactive approach to fiscal operations will allow for the continued strengthening of our financial resources and a solid financial foundation that the university has developed over the last 6 years. With that, Madam Chair, I will end my presentation.
Thank you. That was very thorough. Any questions from the committee? comments? I think we're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee.
I do have Ellen Herbst from the University System
ma'am.
signed up. You want to come up and say a few words?
Let, Elliot have this. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. You have our written testimony. I'm here on behalf of the Chancellor with regard to the question Mr. Klein raised. I will just spend just a moment to say the system has full confidence in our president. We see the actions he is taking to increase enrollment. As the top financial person in the system, I can tell you that Coppin has, since I've been here certainly and before, always lived within their means. As the president has said, the student body they serve is an important one, and one that we need to grow. So the issue is not, in my opinion, in our opinion, the amount of state appropriations. The issue is we need to grow enrollment. And we are working with the president and his team as they develop their plan. So we respectfully say we think the amount of appropriations is appropriate at this time.
Good. Thanks for that input.
Thank you.
No more comments? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee.
Okay, last but certainly not least, we have the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Sarah Baker is our analyst, and we have Dr. Freeman Hrabowski, and we've been seeing you lots lately. And Ms. Kathy Detloff, the Vice President, Administration and Finance. And you can go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to start on page 4 with Exhibit 1, which shows the trends in first-time applications. And this provides an early indication if students would come back to campus. And since the start of the pandemic, the number of applications has decreased 6.4%. During this time, UMBC did increase its acceptance rate from 60 to 81%, but this is a trend seen across the country as colleges expected a decline in the number of students who enroll. For fall 21, despite a decline in applicants, the numbers of students who enrolled increased over 22%. Turning to page 5 and Exhibit 2, this shows the trend in fall enrollment, which declined for a third year. In fall 21, enrollment declined 0.8%. After 2 years of decline, the number of first-time students increased 22% to over 2,000 students, and this is UMBC's largest ever incoming class. However, as experienced by other institutions, 458 students did not return, which is substantially larger than in previous years. We asked the president to comment on the factors leading to the large decline in continuing students, the efforts being taken to reach out to the students and encourage them to return, and also efforts to increase the number of transfer students. Turning to Exhibit 3 on page 6 and retention rates. It appears the pandemic did impact the 21 cohort with a second-year rate that declined by 4 percentage points to 83%, where the third-year rate remained steady, increasing to 72% with the 20 cohort. Exhibit 4 on page 7 shows the 6-year graduation rates. And overall, the recent rates for all students has remained stable at 73%, and there was a slight widening in the achievement gap with the 2016 cohort. Exhibit 5 on page 8 compares the 6-year graduation rates of Pell and non-Pell first-time, full-time, and transfer students. And overall, transfer students graduated at a higher rate than first-time, full-time students. Also of note, on average, there's only a 2% percentage point difference between the graduation rates of Pell and non-Pell students. Turning to affordability on page 9. This compares the cost of attendance and the net average price, and overall the net average price is 42% lower than the published price. Exhibit 7 on page 10 shows the cost of attendance. Shows the institutional aid, and in 2018, spending on aid increased by $6 million with need-based aid accounting for half of this growth. Since then, the total of expenditures have increased by 7.3% to $30.2 million, which is driven by increases in scholarships. Turning to the federal relief funds, in Exhibit 8 on page 11, UMBC received a total of $51.6 million, of which $22.8 million was designated for financial aid. A majority of these funds, about $27 million, are to be expended this fiscal year. Exhibit 9 on page 12 shows how the funds not designated for financial aid were used. And as you see, a majority of the funds, 26 million, are being used to cover losses in revenue and auxiliary. Exhibit 10, which is on actually 13 and 14, shows the budget changes by program area for 21 and 22. Overall expenditures increased 52.1 million, and most of the spending increases are related to atypical spending patterns in 21 related to the pandemic. In 22 is assumed these expenses will be more in line with pre-pandemic levels. In addition to cover budget shortfalls in 21, UMBC instituted a hiring freeze and temporary salary reduction plans, and 22 reflects a return to more normal salary levels. Of the 10.1 million increase in instruction, 5.7 is related to a partial restoration of the 21 BPW reduction, which stipulated the funds be used to hire and retain faculty, expand activities in healthcare, public health, and health service programs. So in terms of revenues, on the next page, actions taken to reduce E&G expenditures result in a surplus of $25.3 million in 21, which was partially used to cover a $28 million deficit in auxiliary related to limiting the number of students on campus. UMBC also used federal funds and fund balance to recover the remaining shortfall. In 22, auxiliary revenues increased by 53.8 million, reflecting a return to pre-pandemic activity level. Overall, UMBC is planning on transferring $17.2 million to the fund balance in 22. Exhibit 11 on page 15 shows the proposed budget. I just want to note the budget does include a proposed deficiency of $500,000 to establish the Maryland Institute for Innovative Computing and to expand the Maryland Technology Internship Program. Overall, after adjusting for the salary increases and deficiencies, state funding increases $23 million or 14.4%. General funds increased $24.7 million, which is slightly offset by a $1.7 million decline in HEF funds. Increases in state funding include $10.5 million related to general salary increases, $6.1 million to restore the remaining portion of the BPW 21 reduction. There's $3 million mandated to establish a Center for Cybersecurity. There's about over $900,000 mandated for funding guideline attainment, and there's $400,000 that was mandated to further UMBC's research and economic development activities. Other unrestricted revenues you see decreased by $8.7 million due to the inclusion of federal relief funds in 22 to offset revenue loss and auxiliaries. However, these funds are also included in the restricted funds, resulting in a double counting of these funds, thereby overstating unrestricted funds and total revenues in 22. When excluding the federal funds, other unrestricted revenues increased by $4.8 million. Overall, total funds increased 2.7% or $14 million in 23 when you excluded the double counting of the funds. Exhibit 12 on page 17 shows the impact COVID has on the composition of revenues. And prior to 2020, the portion of revenues was fairly stable. With the campus closing in the spring of 22 and refunds being provided to students, auxiliary revenues fell by $19.5 million. And this resulted in these revenues going from accounting to 21% of the budget to the revenues to 15% of the revenues. In 21, the reduced occupancy of residence hall and the dedensification of the campus resulting in auxiliary revenues only accounting for 5% of total revenues. Declining enrollment has resulted in tuition and fees comprising less of revenues going from 37% in 2019 to 33% in 23, and state funds increasing from 34 to 41%. Exhibit 13 on page 19 compares authorized and filled positions between 19 and 22. And during this time period, vacancies rates increased by 0.4% to 8.6%. 3 program areas, student services, institutional support, and operations and maintenance, saw their average vacancy rates increase by 7.6 percentage points. And auxiliary increased from 9 to 16.2%, which reflects reductions in student services in 21 and 22 and the current challenges to filling positions. And finally, on page 20, the recommendation is to see the USM overview for system-wide recommendation. And that concludes my presentation.
Great job. Thank you very much. Dr. Hrabowski,
Thank you.
It makes me sad to think that this is your last time visiting before this committee. I don't know that we're ready to let you go yet. But welcome.
Thank you so much, Chairman King. I appreciate that. Let me just start by thanking you. I was glad you allowed me to go last because I wanted to say thank you for literally 45 years in this state and 35 years at UMBC. And I can say as I go around the country that this is a state, as I said the other night, that as legislators and a governor who believe in higher education and education. And so I'm going to do two things. Most important, answer the questions. Thank you, Ms. Baker, for the fair analysis, right? And I want to introduce two people. You've met Marie Lilly, our senior leader, who's been here with Lisa Auction before, and she helps us a great deal. And I wanted you to meet our new Vice President for Finance and Administration. I want to give credit to Lynn Schaefer, who's been with me a number of years, who's retired. She found her and brought her in, and she brings amazing experience from Hopkins, from Delaware, University of Delaware, and most recently from Rutgers at the senior level. And as a president leaving, there's nothing I can do that's more important as a gift to the university than to have strong, stable financial management. We've got that. My story today, our story today is the best I've had in 35 years. And that surprises me given where we were just a year ago when all students left the residence halls. We did something that most campuses in the country didn't do. We gave them their money back. Okay, we were not able, most places said we can't afford to give it back. We gave it back, so millions and millions of dollars. We're coming out of that hole now, but it worked well because people believe in us. 20% increase in freshmen. They know we care. 40% increase in grad students. Now the two questions, because I want to brag for a minute, but let me get to the two questions from Ms. Baker. The first involves the decline in the continuing students. It's a good news story, counterintuitively. We had more students graduate. If you have more students graduate, they're not continuing. All right, that's the first point, and that's a good one. The second one is we have a new program called the Finish Line Program. That means we bring back students who were close to graduating over a number of years, who are within 30 hours of graduating. Bring them back, get them some financial support, and let them graduate. So over the last 2 years, we've had a couple of hundred we've brought back that way. It's a good story. We need to do more of that in the state of Maryland. You got thousands of people who never graduated who have over 60 credits. Some states like Florida give special funds for returning students. It's something for the state to think about. And the third point that I want to mention has to do with the fact that for a couple of years, and I know that Ms. Baker remembers this, we had a smaller freshman class deliberately, and that's coming through the population right now. And there was a reason for that. UMBC is the public Carnegie Mellon in our state. We are about half of our students are in science and engineering. Average for everybody else is about 20%. Make no mistake, biochemistry, computer science are much more expensive than the wonderful disciplines in the humanities and social sciences. And number two, Americans do not tend to do well in the STEM disciplines. Right now, when we're talking about global war, we need more people in technology. We need them in humanities too, and the arts, but we need more. And we're not graduating. We know we've got big shortages in technology. And the key here is that we were not getting the funds to bring in more computer science majors. So for a couple of years, we deliberately decided to have smaller freshman classes. You all have been able to give us more money with the state, and so we built the freshman class back up. We can always have more people, right? Now the key will be to make sure we do well with them. And so it's a good news story in that sense. At the same time, there are families that need more financial support. And we want to work on that. I'm not saying we're perfect. No, we've got to do more. We'll be calling those who didn't come back to see how we can help them. And the final thing, though, this is what I want to make sure the legislature remembers. We have never been allowed to have business as a major. We're the only campus in the state, in the country, and business is twice as popular as any other major in America. So if a student can't make it in computer science, they would like to have that opportunity for business, and so they transfer to a place that has business. So we've always had that. I'm not complaining, but I'm just saying, I hope as we work things out in higher education, that we allow UMBC to have business and undergrad electrical engineering. I've been saying that 40 years.
I would love to get to that point.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Let the record show that. All right, let the record show that.
Let the
And then,
record show.
yeah, and just give that as a gift. I'll be away, but let that new president see. We're going to get business for UMBC. But then the second question that Ms. Baker raised, a very good one, is about transfer students. Several things to be said. You all know community college numbers are down anyway. We know that. But our yield rate continues to be about 60%. But there's several things we're doing. We had a big grant from Gates in STEM that's helping us out with the STEM majors. I'm very pleased in the growing partnership between Montgomery College, USG, and UMBC. And we just got these new majors there now, including in computing. You're going to see that it's going. We got about 1,000 now. We got to build those numbers.
That make me so happy.
I know that. Now I want you to be happy. So I want all the folks in Montgomery County to be happy, and other places. Wait a minute.
Covering all the bases.
That's it. And the other thing I would say is that we're working with the system on the Arts System program, and that is the answer. We will be working with them on the revamped Arts System. We'll get even more. But I do want to say this. In my 4 decades in higher education in this state, 4+, I've never seen the system working more effectively under Jay as now. It's worked well with others, but I'm just saying, I've never seen the campuses working more effectively together. And that's got to help us out. That builds synergy when you see the campuses from around the state. We meet regularly, and it's going very well. In your document, if you just look at it, the 2 things I wanted to say, if you just look at the beautiful campus, just the front page, this is the legislature and the government. This is what you all have done. This was a baby. This was in the 60s. It was mud. All right. Now here we are with billions of dollars here that you've invested in us. Number one, now we are Research One. Huge. The idea that one of the 3, along with the powerhouse UMB, very proud of that. And just look at the first page, and I'm going to stop. Over this 30 years that I've been president, and it's not about me, it's about the people there who worked so hard. They worked so hard. The key points, you're going to appreciate this. We've gone from about 10,000, a little over 10,000 students to moving towards 14,000. So we've had a 30% increase in the number of students, but that's not the big deal. The big deal is we have doubled the number of degrees every year. Look on the right-hand side right there. With that same, with the 10,000 we were producing, we had about 1,700 people graduating. Now we've got 3,400. That's graduation rate from 35%. You know what we said when I was first there? I'll never forget it. Well, we are hard because we got the science and engineering. And it is true. But the fact is we figured out ways to help students of all races to become number 1 in producing black kids to go on. But we're now up to 70%. But even better than that, we know where 20% more are. They're either in another campus going on to business somewhere else or something else, or they're still at UMBC. So when you put the ones who've graduated with those who are still enrolled or graduated, it's 90%. It's 90%. So it's a good news story. And then if you look down there, the final thing I would tell you, the research awards, under $10 million when in 1992. Now this past year, $200 million. Okay, so it's one of the best stories of American higher education. That's it. But it only happened because of the hard work of the people and the enlightenment of the legislature and the governor, the elected officials who said, let's build this place up. I would just ask, as I leave, that you keep seeing us as the jewel in America that we are. We are being seen. And when you took that vaccine, remember, it was a UMBC graduate who gave you that. If you took Moderna or you took Moderna or Pfizer.
We may not let you leave.
And
there is that.
That is that. She's the first black woman in the world to create a vaccine. She's at Harvard, but she was living here in Maryland at NIH. You know, and the last Surgeon General is our graduate. Look at that last page. Look at that. You want to just talk about product, the quality of product. The alumni legislators, our speaker, we're so proud of her. All the other members of the legislature.
That's right.
Surgeon General, President of Clemson. Look at that. Professors at Harvard, all the way over to the head of Applied Physics Lab. And the young woman from inner city Baltimore, Vice President for Economic Development at Hopkins, coming out of Merver High School.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Yes.
I, over the last 2 years, have kind of changed my scholarship program, which to me is a huge indicator of where kids are right now.
Yes.
Trying to find kids that are ready to go on to higher education.
Yes.
And where I used to give $1,000 to a kid as a scholarship, now they're turning it back and saying, I can't come up with the rest.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
the last 2 years, I have changed that, and I've given them like full tuition to go to a community college.
Okay.
It's a 4-year
Okay.
scholarship.
Okay.
So I'm giving way less kids money.
Okay.
But more money in order
Yes.
to get them there.
Yeah.
But they still, we've got to find a way to work with high schools
Yes,
to get kids to understand that they can do it.
that you can do it either way. No, I agree.
Because we are just not there.
I agree.
Um,
I agree.
And I've spent so much time with a whole lot of kids.
Yes.
I had one that I gave a full scholarship to last year, and he called me on the first day of classes
Uh-huh.
and said, I'm trying to sign up for classes, and I can't get in anything. Well, no, he didn't know when to sign up for
You
classes.
gotta do it
He
when
didn't
you
have
do it. That's it. That's
that,
it.
the supports anywhere to
Sure.
get him.
Sure.
And that
Sure.
seems to be
Sure.
just a big problem.
Sure, sure. You know, the two
All over.
things, it's a good point. In Baltimore, College Bound does a good job of going to schools and working to get kids, because we've got to teach them they can get financial aid if they apply in February. By the first
They
part
have
of
to
March.
know earlier
It's very
they can go,
important.
that they can go to school.
So they can get the
just-
federal money and the state money. That's a big part of it. And we're doing more of that in Baltimore. I'm not sure it's done all over the state. That's number one. Number two, I hope you all saw, it's like a gift from heaven that the Sherman family and Betsy Sherman, George just died last year, just gave us our largest gift. It's in the Baltimore Sun today, $21 million.
Oh, nice.
Now, that's for K through 12. That's for working to produce pre-K teachers and math and science teachers in challenging schools. Okay, we're doing a lot to build up those scores, because you've also seen the test scores have gone down. We got to
Yes.
work on that, right? So the good news about UMBC is, from the social side to thinking about communities and working with the schools, Lakeland, Elmer, and others, all the way to the economic development side, where we got 100 and some companies with 30% women CEOs. We got that continuum there. That's why I say it's a model. And what you're saying, we need to be working even more closely with K through 12,
Yes.
right? On both the academic side, as a math teacher, we got to improve reading and math scores, and we have to help them understand what it takes. We need more programs with students to go in the junior and senior years to have the college experience. The early college programs in Prince George's County are impressive.
Right.
We've seen some good, but we
And-
need
and
more of that.
Kids need to know that it's possible
Yes.
years earlier
That's
than
right.
their junior year.
That's
They-
exactly right. And we
they've
need,
gotta
that's.
start
that's-
being focused on
Yes.
going to college.
Yeah, so if you come, we'll show you the schools where we're working with kids starting in pre-K. More, we need much more of that going on. And kudos to Betsy Sherman, she was a teacher. She was the only white teacher in a black school in Virginia. And she said, I want to give scholarships to kids of all races to help kids who are in most need. It's a powerful story.
Yes. Any questions? Senator Quarterman?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I'm still relatively new to this committee, but really appreciate your passion and commitment, not only to the students at UMBC, but obviously also education as a whole here in Maryland. I would like to ask you, though, as you're leaving, what do you see as far as UMBC's future, or what would you like to see?
Sure.
As far as your,
Sure.
moving on, and what should we be looking
I
for?
appreciate
What
that.
should we be looking to support with the next
I
administration? coming
really
in?
appreciate that. I really do. They're working to get a new president. I'm not a part of that process. Kathy's in that group. So we're going to get somebody good, because people want to be here. The presidency of UMBC is strong. Not about me. It's that
Oh,
people,
yes, it is.
Well, it's so kind, but they've treated me so well. People want to be here from all over the country. So you're going to get somebody good. But number two, we got all these bright students. We got a good record. We got kids at Oxford and Rhodes and up at Harvard. Here's the deal. We need to understand how expensive science and engineering are. Everybody talks about STEM. But when you look at our amount of money per student next year, we're not there. I can say thank you for what you've done, but you've been able to help some other places a whole lot more. Okay, I can say that as I leave, and I'm working with universities around the country. I'm saying UMBC needs to be funded in a way that is commensurate with all these STEM graduates and other fine graduates and other disciplines. If you look at the amount, just look at the amount, and you'll see we deserve more. The second is unloose us. Let us go. Give us that business in electrical engineering, because the state needs more people there. It's not about one school or another. There was a time years ago, believe it or not, when we didn't want to give every school computer science. We thought it was too much. Now we know everybody needs to do computer science. Same thing is true with business and with electrical engineering. So if we can get that, and you give us a level
I
of
think
funding.
we need to open up.
Yeah, all things are possible.
A whole bunch of things.
Because we want to build it. We're at not quite 14,000 now. We want to take that up. We can go up to 15,000, 16,000 students. We can do
Yes.
it. People want to be at UMBC. They want to be, because they know if you go there, You can go to grad school, you can get a job in Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, NSA, we're their #1 producer. The quality, that's why I give you this audience, the quality of the product. That's it. So I appreciate you asking me that question. That's it. Take pride in we are like the North Carolina, NC State, Virginia Tech. Their students are no better than ours, all right? Proportionately, they're twice as large, but you look pound for pound, our research faculty and everything, we're there. The only difference is we're much more diverse than they are. That's the only, so treat us that way. Let us be, we love, you've got the HBCU, you've got the wonderful College Park, the great comprehensive, but here we are the big STEM school with the specialization there. The others are, we need to be treated that way because we can build the economy. Think about that. Help us with that, please.
I'm telling you, you're going to be a hard man to replace. I just remember, it's not that many years ago that I came over and walked the campus with you, and I walked away from there so amazed at how much you knew about every student. I mean, and what the personal relationship you had with so many kids, and you have just been just phenomenal in that position. And I've just enjoyed being your friend and being an associate with you, and I sure wish you the very best.
I'll be a recruiter for the state of Maryland because wherever I go, and I'll be doing more at Harvard and other places, I'm saying there's no place in the country for higher education better than this state. I can tell you that. And I talk about the STEM, but I want you to remember, the speaker is a psychology major. So I want majors in all these disciplines,
So
all right?
that's why she's playing all those mind games with us.
She's got that psychology
That's
background.
what it is.
That's what I'm talking about. We need the social sciences and humanities too. So don't, I'm talking STEM, but I'm telling you, our arts and humanities, social, they are out there working. Social workers, all of the teachers, we need them across. But we deserve, I think, to be treated as a kind of jewel in the system. Because we're different. We're the baby in the system. We're only 50-something years old, and look at where we are, Research 1.
Right.
But that's your doing. That's what I want to say. I came to say. That's why I wanted to have a minute just to say I really appreciate it. You've been wonderful to me and wonderful to my campus.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. God bless you all.
God bless you.
All right. Thank you.
And we hope to still see you around.
I'll be around. I'll be helping.
Okay.
I'm going to be working with national agencies in Washington. So I'll be using Maryland as the example.
Good.
Of where they need to go. I mean, I think we got the most enlightened elected officials in the country.
I hope so.
Thank you all.
We have one last witness here this afternoon, Deborah Michaels from AFSCME.
And she's my colleague, and we're very proud of her. This is a place where this union leader is an excellent employee at UMBC.
Nice.
We love them. We do.
Come on up.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. I agree with your sentiments regarding Dr. Hrabowski. We are definitely going to miss him. My name's Debbie Michaels. I have worked at UMBC as support staff for 14 years. I'm here today in support of Dr. Hrabowski and the faculty and staff at UMBC. Though I love working at UMBC, I have struggled financially the entire time I have worked there. Even after a promotion to a higher grade position and over a decade of service, I am still $5,000 short of the bottom of the mid-range annual salary. My children and I have been forced to move solely because I could no longer afford the rent and the utility costs of our modest housing due to inflation. I'm terrified right now that my landlord is going to raise my rent or that my utilities are going to increase. I'm getting older and moving is not easy anymore. 30% of my years at UMBC have garnered no change in my salary, even though my responsibilities, knowledge, skills, unique to UMBC, have increased considerably. To add insult to injury, a new hire will start at close to my current salary, if not higher, because the market value for my skills and my experience is much higher than my current rate. In the maintenance positions at UMBC, we have so many vacancies, which was noted, because the starting salary is so low. When we do manage to find a qualified applicant willing to accept the low salary, that employee comes in at the same rate as the current crew, which is a slap in the face to the seasoned and loyal workers. We often have to initiate an equity adjustment review for those employees, which basically resets them to the new starting salary. Therefore, in essence, they're making the entry-level salary after working there for years. No gain for their increased knowledge and skills. This is called wage compression. Had we received COLAs, merit increases, it would have been reflected in our salaries, and new hires would not be starting at the same or higher rates than the more experienced staff. Additionally, what goes into our pockets, especially in the lower salaried ranges, it goes right back into the economy. So we are requesting that this budget and all USM school budgets include incremental increases every year in the form of the COLAs and the merit adjustments in exchange for the value of the university that the universities receive in the form of our increased knowledge and skills. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions? I don't see any. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for
Thank you.
waiting all this time. Yes. Okay, I think that does it. Have a nice weekend.